So this just in out of San Francisco Chronicle, Trump considers jumping in on Los Angeles homelessness problem. And this is by Kevin Fagan, Tal Kopan, and Sarah Ravani. And this was put out September 10th, 2019. And this is exactly what you will see when you come to Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. You will see and you will find, not even just in the Los Angeles area, there's neighboring cities of Los Angeles that you will find the homeless population is starting to grow significantly. And so the Trump administration is on the crackdown. Trump considers jumping in on Los Angeles homelessness problem because it is so prevalent. So after labeling California's homelessness crisis a disgrace, President Trump has sent a fact-finding team to the state to look into addressing the problem and possibly clamping down on encampments. But the team is apparently sticking only to Los Angeles for right now. So Los Angeles is going to be the focus of the homelessness encampments. So the reaction from Northern California, where officials said that they've heard nothing from the Trump administration about any new push on homelessness, cut straight from cynicism and frustration. So I don't know what they're doing. I'll believe it when I see it. Nobody has contacted us, said San Francisco Mayor London Breed. You think I know what's going on in Trump's head. So Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf said that it's always hard to tell with this president if he is trying to produce a media soundbite or actually produce policy. So to me, this feels like more pre-election posturing at the expense of our most vulnerable residents, whether it's immigrants or our homelessness population, she said. And so it's pretty much what the focus is going to be. So on Tuesday, Trump administration officials visited Los Angeles to learn more about the city's response to the homelessness crises, according to a statement from Mayor Eric Garcetti. So Los Angeles is like most other communities along California's urbanized coast, has seen significant increases in the number of homelessness and the homeless population and people over the past 2 years. So at a campaign rally in Ohio last month, Trump lambasted Los Angeles for horrible, horrible conditions on its streets. So what they are doing to our beautiful California is a disgrace to our country, the president said at a rally. He also mentioned San Francisco as part of the problem as well. So Garcetti, however, said in a letter to the president Tuesday that he appreciated the visit from administration officials and hoped it would be followed up with helpful action. So to cut to the chase, if you are committed to working with America's cities and local leaders to address the national epidemic of homelessness, there's a lot your administration can do, Garcetti wrote in a letter obtained by the Chronicle. So sources told the Chronicle that the federal visitors to Los Angeles mentioned the possibilities of building new facilities and renovating existing ones, and that the federal government might play a large role in overseeing healthcare and housing. So they also discussed how to crack down on street encampments. The latest Trump action was first reported by the Washington Post. So the visit and on-site talks involved officials from the White House, Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the Domestic Policy Council. Like many Americans, the president has taken notice of the homelessness crises, particularly in cities and states where the liberal policies of overregulation, excessive taxation, poor public service deliveries are combining to dramatically increase poverty and public health risks, said White House spokesman John Deere. So in June, the president took action and signed an executive order to confront the regulatory barriers to affordable housing development, a leading cause to homelessness. President Trump has directed his team to go further and develop a range of policy options for consideration to deal with this tragedy. So Representative Karen Bass, Democrat of Los Angeles, was dismissive to the visit to California. So it goes on to say that she said, she doesn't believe that Trump proposed crackdown on the problem is serious. So I think that the fact that the president raised it, he just is raising it as a way to slam California, as though he just noticed there's a homelessness encampments and homelessness people, and we never did, she said. So it's almost like he's acting as though he never noticed it, where it's a surprise. So he's going to come and save the day all of a sudden. And when he has never said or done anything positive toward California. So a lot of people are not very enthusiastic in the visit and this proposed crackdown on his homeless crises. And they feel, and this is off the article, they feel, some people are feeling that it might be a move because election time is rolling around near. And so this is another ploy to get more votes. So Governor, going back to the article, Gavin Newsom's chief spokesman, Nathan Click, said he would welcome the president's help in addressing the state's homelessness crises, but he was a bit defensive about Trump's earlier tone toward the state. So in fact, the first 8 months as governor, Gavin Newsom has made addressing homelessness and housing insecurity a top priority, Click said. So as a result, the state is doing more to help local governments fight homelessness and expand proven programs than at any point in the state's history. But let's face the facts. Homelessness is a national crisis. So it's not just in LA. It's not just in San Francisco. I have seen that homelessness is also in other states. It's in New York, it's in Atlanta, and it's growing. It's in Seattle, it's in San Francisco, and yes, it's in Los Angeles, but it's also now in Pasadena, where they have a huge problem with homelessness as well. And there's other neighboring cities that are battling homelessness, El Segundo, and so on and so forth. You've got the beaches like Venice Beach, where there's a lot of homeless encampments around beach areas. There is homelessness in Hollywood, and so there are homeless encampments you can find even outside of California. So it is a national crisis. And so the president is willing to put serious solutions, if he's putting those serious solutions together with real investments on the table. California stands ready to talk, Click said. But he could start by ending his plan to cut. These are the things that people, the key issues that they feel contribute to more homelessness. Trump, he could start by ending his plan to cut food stamps, gut health care for low-income people, and scare immigrant families from accessing government services. So no, Trump delegation appears to have made its way to San Francisco, Oakland, Santa Clara County, according to the officials there. So if you go to all of these different places, they're dealing with homelessness on about the same level. And so Breed said that despite the tone Trump has taken on homelessness, she would welcome discussions of any help that the president might want to send to her city. So the fact is that federal government has underfunded affordable housing to San Francisco and the state of California for years now, leaving it to the cities to come up with their own resources and solutions to addressing this significant issue, Bree said. So we welcome the opportunity to receive much needed financial support to invest in affordable housing. So Shafe said if the president is sincere about helping California with its homelessness problem, he will help us produce affordable housing, not sweep our fellow humans from the streets. But it's difficult to believe that a president who proposed $8.8 billion cut in HUD this year has any sincerity about actually helping address this cause of homelessness. So Shafe added, which I've heard that most of this homelessness has really been a huge problem over the years, but now that we have the Trump administration in effect, that a lot of the much needed programs, which number one, it states here an $8.8 billion cut to HUD this year, has any sincerity. They feel that he doesn't have any sincerity in actually helping the homelessness crisis problem. So Shafe added that over the last several years, the federal government has cut funding for housing vouchers and funding that supports homeless shelters as well. So that has exacerbated the homelessness crises and not helped it at all, particularly in a high housing cost area like California, she said. So our homeless residents need compassion, not cracking down. So Taylor Griffin, a spokeswoman for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, San Francisco, said that so far Trump has only exacerbated homelessness. Homelessness is a challenge to the conscience of our nation and a growing humanitarian crisis for communities across the country, she said. So if the president truly wants to address the issues, he can begin with a serious commitment to combating income disparities, investing in housing assistance, and expanding affordable housing opportunities for American individuals, families, veterans experiencing homelessness. So this was out of the San Francisco Chronicle staff writers Alexi Kosseff and Emily Fancher contributed to this report. And so's Kevin Fagan, Tal Kopan, and Sarah Ravani. They're San Francisco Chronicle staff writers. And so this I thought was pretty interesting. Now, the other thing that I noticed about this particular issue coming up is if I show you this, you do see this, but you don't only see this in Los Angeles. You see it in a lot of different places. So I wanted you to take a look at what is happening just in Los Angeles, and you can see where all of the homelessness encampments, you can see a few of them at least. This is what it looks like, and you'll see high rises and towers of apartment buildings that are empty. They're condos or they're luxury apartments, and a lot of them are so high and expensive and overpriced that people, regular average working people, cannot afford to live in them. Mostly they're apartments that are what they call luxury apartments. And so this is what I've seen. These are the scenes that I've seen. And now I'm going to pretty much go back, and you'll see here where it says Trump is pushing for a crackdown on homeless camps in California report. And so this was 7 hours ago. And so this is what he is intending on doing, is cracking down on homelessness encampments. And so this is out of the Hill, Trump pushing for crackdown on homeless camps in California. And it's by Rachel Franzen. And so there's a clip, of course, that goes along with it, and it probably is basically explaining what's in the article, but I will read. It's saying that President Trump has directed officials to crack down on homelessness in California. The Washington Post reported Tuesday, citing 4 government officials familiar with the matter. So officials have reportedly discussed getting homeless people off the streets in areas including Los Angeles and into government-backed facilities. So the Post reported that the talks have ramped up in recent weeks. So 2 officials told the Post that ideas such as tearing down existing homeless camps and creating new facilities or refurbishing old ones to give the federal government more control over healthcare housing are being considered. So the administration reportedly has not completed a final plan as of yet. Officials from the White House Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, better known for, and Domestic Policy Council were in California this week for discussions. According to the Post, officials said that the Los Angeles Skid Row area was one focus that they had their eye on. So, and still do. So the White House official confirmed to The Hill that there is a team in California for fact-finding and learning more about the issue. White House spokesman Judd Deere told The Hill in a statement that Trump has directed his team to develop a range of policy options for consideration to deal with this strategy. So like many Americans, the president has taken notice of the homeless crises, particularly in the cities and states where the liberal policies of over-regulation, excessive taxation, poor public service delivery are combining to dramatically increase poverty and public health risks, Deere said. So it's basically like the other article, but it may go into some other things. So he also noted that Trump in June signed an executive order to confront the regulatory barriers of affordable housing development. The Hill has reached out to the HUD program for comment. Alex Commissar, a spokesperson for Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, told The Hill in a statement that the mayor's office learned very recently that the administration plans to visit the city to learn more about the strategies for responding to the homeless crises. So we welcome them and look forward to showing them our work to confront this humanitarian emergency, Commissar said. So the president in recent months has sparred with some California leaders over issues facing their area. So nearly half of all the homeless people living in the streets of America happen to live on the street in the state of California. And so what they are doing to our beautiful California is a disgrace to our country. It's a shame, quote, quote, Trump said at a campaign rally last month. So he also wrote in July that the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi San Francisco area district was failing badly. So the president told Fox News earlier this year that he may get involved in the issue in California. So we may intercede, we may do something to get that whole thing cleaned up, he said. It's inappropriate. So now we have to take the people and we have to do something. And we're really not very equipped as a government to be doing that kind of work. And so this is basically what has been updated. And so anyway, with that being said, this has become a real national problem anytime the White House is focusing on specific cities, and Los Angeles is one of the main cities that they're taking notice because of all of the homeless encampments. The urine, the feces, the typhus, how police and law enforcement, when they are walking in those areas, that their lives are at risk for catching disease. Just regular residents that live in the downtown of Los Angeles and then neighboring cities now have a boom in homeless encampments just all over. It is like it is spreading like an epidemic. And so I wanted to shift gears. I don't know if this is going to work. Okay, so I don't know if this will work, but what I saw earlier today did not look good. I kind of feel like what happens is some cities they try to do a count of homeless people, and you're not really able to count all of the people, because here's the problem with that. They're counting people that are on the street, but they're not including the people that are living out of hotels and motels, or living from place to place with different people, or they're here in an RV, or they're sleeping out of their car, and you may not be able to count all of the homeless people. And so Pasadena also has a problem with homelessness. They claim all the time that homelessness has dropped, but it isn't. It actually has grown. And so homelessness dropped 20% in Pasadena, but what do the numbers actually show? There were 542 homeless people counted in Pasadena on January the 22nd. And so I just want to forewarn you that a lot of times people will count only the people that are on the street. That is not the people that are living out of motels, people that are living with friends of friends, people that are living in RVs or out of their car, people that are moving about and they're like the mobile homeless. You know, they might be in a car, or they might be in an RV, or they might be, somebody that kind of travels around. They don't always sleep at the same spot. So the number of homeless people living in Pasadena on the night of this year annual count. And so that's what this was talking about. This is an ad. And so I don't think it's accurate. I'm not really going to read all of it, but what I am going to read is the first part of it. It says that the number of homeless people living in Pasadena on the night of that year's annual count dropped 20% compared to the year before, which officials said is a sign of increased funding and resources that are working to tackle the problem. But they cautioned that the snapshot census does not show the complete picture of the immense crisis plaguing Southern California. So some 180 volunteers canvassed Pasadena streets, underpasses, shelters, parks, Sunset. Okay, so, but not everywhere have you looked. So 321 were living on the street, 183 were staying in emergency shelters, and 38 were in transitional housing. 51 were under the age of 18. So they'll also talk about people's background, whether they're a veteran, if it's an LGBTQ individual, if it's a teenager, if it's somebody that has mental illness, and so on and so forth. And so earlier today, this right here, this article, actually this article is not that accurate, if you ask me. The homelessness has not dropped in Pasadena. It actually has grown. And so what I saw earlier regarding this issue here is Okay, so Pasadena has more affordable housing than its neighbors, but it's still not meeting this. Okay, the housing crises, part one, Pasadena, the fight over city and state development laws. Marv's Place in Pasadena is the last stop for now, formerly homeless. Okay, so what I've seen is that there's a problem with affordable housing in Pasadena. And so that has been the major focus. And what I know it to be is that they were building condos or they were building, like luxury apartments, just much like what Los Angeles has done. But that those units are not affordable, and that is why their homeless encampments have grown because of that. Or they will be growing. If they haven't grown right now, they will be growing. So Pasadena's current affordable housing supply is falling short of its state-mandated housing goals, according to recently released data from the state, and not that the city is alone in that regard. So nearly every city in Los Angeles County is falling short of these goals, but few are making the concerted effort to push that Pasadena officials have made, one that's in part motivated by those recent release numbers. And so the recent city council meeting officials have said that they're afraid of the falling out of the compliance with the state, like Huntington Beach, with the state suing earlier this year. And if the city fails to meet the state's affordable housing goals, the state could effectively steamroll local development laws and allow significantly more construction in the name of affordable housing, according to David Reyes, director of Pasadena's Planning and Community Development Department. So Pasadena was threatened with a similar fate last fall when the state's Department of Housing and Community Development sent a draft letter to the city's officials saying they out of compliance if they went ahead with a proposed plan to reduce building heights across the city, that the plan was immediately scrapped. So the draft letter was never finalized or officially sent, but it planted a seed of fear in Pasadena officials. And so now losing local control over developments is the last thing they want. The state breaks down its affordable housing goals into 7-year periods, subdivided into income brackets. Pasadena is mandated to approve 340 building permits for the very low income units in 2013 all the way to 2021. Right now, 62.5% of the way through that cycle. So Pasadena has only permitted 42.6%, or 145 units. And so the low income units, it gets dramatically worse, okay, for the low income units. And so only 38 permits have been issued out of 207. The state demands by 2021. So for units for families with moderate incomes, 45 permits have been issued out of 224. So the low numbers are turned upside down for homes targeting above moderate income levels. So Pasadena has approved 2,100 permits out of the 561 the state mandated. So the 374% more than required. And there's an additional 2,700 units the city has waiting in the wings. So the developers have gone through environmental reviews and the multitude of approvals, but don't have building permits just yet. So they won't be counted among the state's statistics until those permits are issued, but Reyes believes that 10% of the units from the projects will be affordable, falling between the very low and the moderate income levels. So still, while it's imbalanced, the mostly falls short of the state's goals. Pasadena is much further along than its neighbors. Okay, so neighboring Alhambra as well, another city in California, has built virtually none of the required affordable housing, not even breaking 1.2% of it. And so the permitting goals until getting to the above moderate category, in which the city has approved less than a quarter of the state's required permits. Arcadia is in a similar boat with 0% of permitting goals met until moderate and above moderate categories, which 20% to 40% to the state's goals respectively. So the trend goes on and on and on through Los Angeles County. Few cities are meeting their goals. Pasadena is closer than most, but the state's data still highlights significant gaps in the fabric of the city's affordable housing blanket, namely the gap in coverage for low and moderate income categories, both neglected in favor of the very low and above moderate income brackets. So in other words, for people who qualify for affordable housing, only those on either end of the spectrum are seeing units built for them. So it could be a function of Pasadena's current development laws, Reyes said. Right now, nearly 1 in 7 of all new apartment units are required to be affordable, and the current legislation allows developers to trade down, Reyes said, meaning if they exclusively add very low income units, they don't have to build nearly as many total affordable units. And so this is what we've seen in Los Angeles. So I'm kind of getting outside of the article, is you see a lot of units that are being built and only a few of them are affordable, but not enough. And so that means instead about 1 in 7, which could be spread around the various qualifying income brackets, it could be as few as 1 in 14, Reyes said. So meeting those benchmarks entitles developers to build a more dense project, one that the city officials never anticipated or wanted. And so that's what happened with the development slated for 253 South Robles Ave, which would have used the state's density bonus laws to legally violate Pasadena zoning codes. So if it had been approved, the state laws would have allowed for a significantly taller building with larger footprint in exchange for eight very low income units of affordable housing instead of 12 to 16 units in the low to moderate categories. So the city council couldn't decide what to do with the project. While it was perfectly legal, only one of the council members seemed to support the development. So those who voted in favor seemed to do it because they were legally obligated. So even then, the council couldn't muster enough votes to do much of anything. So a tied vote effectively killed the project, and at the next council meeting, officials voted to change the city's inclusionary housing ordinance to get a few more units of affordable housing from each project coming down the pike. And so the legislation was aimed to keep developers away from the state's more generous density bonus laws, theoretically enticing them to follow the Pasadena's more restrictive but time-efficient offerings, Reyes said. And so in the process, it may have accidentally addressed the Pasadena affordable housing gap, or at least it takes a step in the right direction. So assuming the city's council passes newly proposed legislation when a final draft lands on the members' desk next month, developers will be required to make 1 in 5 apartment units affordable. Half of those would be low-income units and low to moderate income units that would each have a quarter of the reserved units. So most critically, developers will lose the ability to trade down under the new legislation law. So that's huge, Reyes said. So while the proposed legislation was widely hailed by the neighborhood groups who supported the move, it was decried by skeptical developers who questioned whether it would really work at all. So Richard McDonald, a lawyer representing the developer of the Los Robles project, was chief among the public critics. So McDonald believes that the city's more stringent requirements of the density bonuses will ultimately drive developers toward the state's more relaxed requirements, meaning running them away from cities that are more stricter on low to moderate income housing to be affordable and making more of those units and then following those guidelines, and then they would go to other cities or other places where they don't have as stringent requirements. So developers cried wolf 15 years ago when the current density bonus ordinance was adopted, but the housing market took off. And the affordable housing developers Charles Loveman, executive director of Heritage Housing Partners, at least until about 2008, when that crash happened, nobody knows if this new legislation will have a modest effect on a major effect or no effect at all. So barring even more new legislation, the newly proposed laws may be one of the few tracks available to the city aiming to meet the state's goals in 2021. So Loveman believes the ordinance will have less of an impact on Pasadena's housing supply than the market itself, pointing to a recent slowdown in construction driven by the ongoing trade war with China. It's causing the cost that is of materials to rise, and he's seeing the prices of his homes jump nearly 20% in the past 2 years. So his company, Heritage Housing Partners, builds homes that fall into the neglected mid-range, the low and moderate income brackets. So the units cost $700,000 to build, but the Heritage sells the houses for $300,000 and $400,000, depending on which income bracket the homes are designated to. But about half the price of the home is paid for by the city, Loveman said. A healthy portion of the funding comes from fees paid by developers who opt not to include any affordable housing in their projects, so Reyes said, dubbed in fees under the proposed legislation. They are expected to double for developers. And so we're really fortunate to be working in Pasadena, Loveman said, noting that the work his company does may not be possible for the LA County's cities, but because he's building homes and not apartment complexes, there are significantly fewer public subsidies available for the county and the state, he said. So Loveman said that this is a mistake. A person's home becomes a wealth engine for them, he said. So I don't know why low-income households shouldn't have the same opportunities as everyone else, which is a great idea, I believe. That's my opinion, is to why not make low-income houses as well, so that low-income people can at least try to become homeowners or have an opportunity to do so. So on top of that, Loveman said that every time someone moves from a renting to an affordable apartment to buying an affordable home, it frees up the apartment for the next family, and that is so true. So it's really hard for the middle class to buy a house in Pasadena, so they're staying in their rental units, he said. So rising home prices disrupted what used to be a normal cycle for renters becoming buyers, leaving apartments to move into homes with their families, and that's not happening. And so this is pretty much what the problems are, because a lot of people don't have money for a down payment, or they can't afford it, or they have other issues going on underlying, maybe not great credit, maybe they don't have any money saved up, or they don't have a job where they can get the money together. Because sometimes it's not a matter of saving up money. If you don't have a job that pays well, you can't save the money to begin with. And so if you have a job, on the other hand, that you can put money aside, a couple of thousand each month, then you might have a down payment saved up a little bit faster versus a person that doesn't have that kind of income. So it's different for different people. And so this is what you're talking about, low-income families who are trying to become homeowners, which doesn't happen often, especially if they have all of these underlying issues. So Pasadena has more affordable housing than its neighbors, but it's still not meeting the state's goals. So this is more of what I saw more recently. And so These are issues that are huge here in California, and not even just in California. It's becoming a national crisis. It's outside of California. California is sort of becoming um, the poster state for the homeless encampments. But aside from that, there are other states that are just as bad that are growing with their homeless encampments as well. You know, I even saw a segment where Hawaii had homeless encampments. And so it's not just limited to just some of the, cities that we normally see, like Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Seattle, and some other places. But there's homelessness happening in even other states, that you wouldn't believe. And so it might be a lot of other things that are going on, that are underlying. It has to do with greed, it has to do with money, it has to do with not paying people wages and giving them pay raises. It has to do with a number of things. So it's not just, let's just crack the whip down on homeless people. And so that's the big problem that we're dealing with here. And so this is the focus on Los Angeles, is where President Trump wanted to set his sights on. Originally, this was the article that we started out with. The pictures are really sad when you see this type of stuff. You walk past this every day. And literally, you guys, if you go to Hollywood, you will see people that are up and down the streets of Hollywood, especially on Vine. Oh my gosh. There's some of it is mental, drugs, drug abuse, mental problems, and then some of what you see is just people wanting to be out there because it's an easy way to escape. You're not having to pay rent and you're not having to pay those high fees. And so if you just accept your fate of being homeless, then, the only thing you have to worry about is curfew and how many hours you can have your tent there until they have to clean up the area. And so literally every morning, in Hollywood, there's a cleanup crew, and they come by periodically, but more frequent lately. They've been coming by, and what they do is they clean off and get rid of the homeless encampments. And about an hour later, literally this happens. Once they've cleaned it up, wait, an hour goes by, and those people come right back and set up tents all over again. And they come back with new stuff, clothes, bags. It's like they never cleaned it up. It's crazy. So I imagine this is happening in a lot of places, but it's growing. And so what used to be people that had drug abuse issues, that had mental abuse and substance abuse, whatever you would call it, now we're finding women on the street, kids on the street, teenagers on the street, families on the street. Homelessness has evolved. You got people living out of hotels and motels. They're living from place to place. There's like these new developments that have popped up. It's called pod living, where you're not really living there permanently. They're temporary beds, and you pay like a fee, and that is becoming a thing. And I seen one that was near the Wilshire area in Los Angeles, like Wilshire and Hoover, where it's called pod living, and you pay a little fee, you rent a bed, and you're there for like maybe a week or so, and then you leave. And so it's just disgusting. I think it's a way for these landlord or owner people to make more money off the homeless, especially if they're desperate. And then you have people that are sleeping out of their RVs, or they're just, forget it. They're just like, they get a mattress, they put it in a corner, and they sleep under the freeway, or they sleep on the sidewalk, or in the parks. And so now I'm also seeing temporary showers and a temporary lot set up where people can take their car and they can park their car in there overnight and sleep in the car. And a lot of that Trump administration is trying to change those things. And so we'll see what becomes of that. With having said that, like, comment, subscribe. What is your thought and feedback on it? It's growing. It's really sad. And is this a reflection of the times that we're living in, where you have people all over? And even here you have, places like Oakland, places that you wouldn't believe. 2 encampments being cleared in Oakland, Berkeley, over advocate objections. You see where they're clearing out encampments in other cities where they have a homeless problem going on. The impending closure of 2 large encampments this week in Oakland and Berkeley has sparked debate over how the city and government agencies decide when to clear homeless settlements that are proliferating across the area and when to let them be. And so these are the things that we are seeing all over. It's really sad. People have to make their houses. And so this is the scenes that we're seeing. And it's all over. It's not in just one place. That was Oakland. This is Los Angeles. And so by the Chase Center, okay, let's see. Let's see. This one has to do with traffic. But actually, no, what I meant to say is the Angels. That's what I was thinking about. The Angels Stadium. Okay, so that homeless camp by the Angels Stadium, okay? And so this was what the scene was by the Angels Stadium. Okay, I think these were videos. I don't really want to show a video, but this is what it was looking like by the Angels Stadium. This is probably a better view of it. It was looking like this. Do you see how many tents? And this is the Santa Ana Riverbed homeless encampments. And this is like by the Angel Stadium. That's what I meant to say. It was called Tent City along Santa Ana. And so this is all of what you were seeing if you went to Anaheim, California. If you were in Santa Ana by the Angels Stadium, they're everywhere. Homeless encampments everywhere. And so this is a national problem. It's showing something. It's really showing that there's huge issues with people having affordable housing and not being able to have housing that meets their needs of their family and themselves. So it's not just, oh, these people are all have substance problems or they're users. Yes, there are some people that are in that situation, but we're seeing now more and more families are out on the street with no place to go. And then you see homeless, maybe not only homeless encampments, you see families that are in hotels. And so this is what the scene that is happening now. You see families that are living in hotels with their kids. And they call them hotel families. And so this is what you're going to see a lot more of, families that are living like this now because they can't afford the luxury apartments. They cannot afford it. And so they've got children and they're just not able, they've got babies and they're not able to afford these luxury high rises and condos that are overpriced living. And so I just thought I would, show you the sad scene that has been happening a lot lately all over. And so, having said that, like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening. And we will see where this issue takes us.